Hi, everyone. This is Joni McGarry. Thank you so much for tuning in. My guest today is Bloomington, Indiana City Council member Dave Rollo. Dave is working hard to raise public awareness about the existential threat of AI. And spoiler alert, it is a large existential threat. So you're going to want to stay tuned and listen to this conversation. But before we get to it, let me just put a company called Crowd Health on your radar. I recently decided to go without health insurance because I was disgusted at the high premiums, the high deductible, and just at the brokenness of that industry. And fortunately, I was able to walk away from it because I found Crowd Health. Crowd Health is not health insurance, but it's an alternative to it. It's a crowdfunding platform that enables members to help fund each other's healthcare expenses, and it does so in a very simple and elegant way. To be a member, you have to be under 65 and relatively healthy. You'll pay a $60 monthly membership fee, and then once a month, you're asked to help fund another member's expense. And you know upfront what that maximum ask will be each month. So you can budget for it. And I will tell you that I am personally literally saving thousands of dollars this year. I am very confident that if I have a medical expense, the crowd will have my back because their track record is superb. In the last 5 years since they've been in business, they have funded 99.9% of all asks to the crowd. So check it out. Go to joincrowdhealth.com and read their member guide. See if you're a candidate. If you do join, use the code JONI, JONI, to get a discount on your first 3 months. They have no enrollment period, so you can join tomorrow if you want. So definitely check it out and be part of a community that is trying to work for change in the healthcare space in a very positive way. I'll also include my interview with the CEO of Crowd Health, Andy Schoonover. It is a terrific conversation, and you'll learn about why this is a great place to be. So check it out. Join crowdhealth.com and use the code JONI, JONI. Now let's get to the show. I'd like to welcome Dave Rollo to the show. Hi, Dave. Welcome.
Hi, Joni. Great to be with you.
Thanks for joining me. Dave is a city council member in our great city of Bloomington, Indiana, and has been for many years. And we met recently. And as I said earlier, we're going to talk about the existential threat of AI and Dave's work in this area, trying to bring it to the awareness of our local leaders and then also beyond that. So, Dave, if you want to say a little bit about your background, and then we'll jump into how you came to be concerned about this threat and what you are trying to do about it.
Sure. So I grew up in Michigan, Detroit area. I moved to Bloomington in the mid '80s to take a job in the chemistry department. I was a technician there, and I moved over to biology after a couple of years. Was a tech for a while. Went to grad school. Then became a research associate. Worked in mostly micro and molecular biology. Uh, and did that until about 15 years ago. And then I went into farming and did farming for a while. Uh, now I'm a policy analyst at a NGO in Washington, uh, working on sustainable economics, and I've been on the city council since 2003. So yeah, and my interest in AI came about, I think, when most people really became aware of it when ChatGPT, fell from the sky and everybody, became acquainted with it very quickly and the power of the model. And of course, it's only been increasing. And so I first learned about it then. I was a little bit, you know, I thought this is remarkable. And like any technology, there's an upside and downside. And this is a
Mhm.
very powerful technology, so it's probably got a flip side of, potential harm. And of course, we'd already gone through a period of where social media, driven by tech interests, had really had an impact on society and not in a good way.
Right, especially young people. Well, all of us actually, but it's training a whole generation of young people to have certain kinds of brains that are not,
Exactly. Yeah.
great.
Yeah. Or
Um,
not developing certain
right,
brains.
right.
And
Thinking brains.
yeah, and of course, driven by the market imperative of uh, selling product. It's meant to be addictive, highly addictive. It
Mhm.
taps into dopamine responses in your brain. I think everybody has been in a kind of a semi-catatonic state of scrolling at times.
Yeah.
And, for young people, it's particularly dangerous because they don't have the discretion. They don't have a prefrontal cortex development. We all know that
Mhm.
until your 20s. And so they're particularly vulnerable. So that was a big concern of mine. But what really concerned me was a Time magazine um, letter signed by notables in the tech movement, tech developers, warning of the downside of these large language models and just AI in general. And they
And
were
it was that in, like, 2023 that that
2023.
happened?
Yeah,
Mhm.
yep. And so I thought that was interesting. They were all calling for a 6-month moratorium, which never happened.
Right.
I'm not sure 6 month would do much, but they were clearly of one mind saying, this is getting out of control, maybe. So that caught my attention. And then there was a companion piece, which was written by Eliezer Yudkowsky, who had been working on what was called AI alignment. Actually, it was his term. He was working on AI safety.
Mhm.
And the alignment refers to, is it aligned with human well-being
Mhm.
and aligned with our best interests? Can we count on it not harming us? And what he found was there is no way to do that. And we can talk about the details. I'm not a computer scientist.
Mhm.
Don't claim to be. I've read a lot about the technology. I come from it from sort of a biologist and natural science kind of perspective in certain ways. And I see it as extremely dangerous. So from that evolved a resolution that I took to the city council, and it's a couple pages, but I mean, to cut to the quick, what it said was you have these whereas clauses in a
Mhm.
resolution which sort of state the case, state facts that could be referenced, and make the case for the whereas the be a resolve clauses, which say what are we going to do about it. And the two main focuses of that was to uh, have our electeds at higher levels take it seriously, learn as much as possible, and and then secondly, put a pause on what's called AGI, which is artificial general intelligence,
Mhm.
as opposed to narrow intelligence, and we can talk about that. And until it can be made safe. So that's essentially the resolution.
And just to talk a little bit about the a city council resolution generally, right? So you're asking your, colleagues to sign on to make a statement that this is what you would like to see in the world. It's not like really signing anything into law. So you're hoping that by making a statement, maybe other city councils will also make that statement and it'll trickle upward. Is that the purpose of a resolution that's non-binding or doesn't turn into a local law?
Yeah, you said it very well. That's
Okay.
exactly right.
Um,
Yes, we're of one mind, declaring that this technology is dangerous and
mhm.
needs regulation. In particular, it needs to be paused until it can be made safe.
And often when a resolution is proposed, it's often passed. Is that correct? Like or very often the council will pass resolutions. Maybe not all the time, but it's not unheard of that the council will pass these types of resolutions.
Yes, they they're not uncommon,
Okay. And what
and
happened?
Bloomington has been outspoken on a number of topics,
Hmm.
and you know, I I believe in small d democracy. That is, I like the city council as a town hall where people come and express themselves and tell us um, what their concerns are, not only locally but internationally if they
Hmm.
want,
Hmm.
and then appeal to us to take an action of some kind, and then together. with many, many cities or counties taking a similar action, it sends a signal.
Mhm,
So I think it can be a very powerful means by which voices from the grassroots extend upward.
mhm. And so what happened with this resolution?
Well, you mentioned many get passed. This one did not. Um, I actually withdrew it. I withdrew it because I understood at the moment, soon after it was introduced, that um, that the council was likely to vote it down, but they were expressing that it should be withdrawn, and it was because mainly because the university had sent in their emissary, their um, uh, liaison to local government to convince council members to vote it down. And
And let
I
me just
didn't.
interject that in case for
Yeah.
people who don't know, the university is Indiana University, and this is their
Yeah.
flagship campus, and it's a research university in the
Mhm.
city of Bloomington.
That's right.
All right, we're a bit of a company town. I use a big
Yeah.
force
It
in
is a
this.
big force.
Yes,
Yeah.
just to
Uh,
set the stage of what the issues may or may not be here. But so they sent somebody, and they were not for just passing a resolution.
yeah. They wanted it disposed of one way or another, either withdrawn or voted down. And I didn't want it to be voted down because that sends a signal that, you know, it it
Mhm.
it it it's harder to bring back, put it that way.
Sure. Yeah.
So I thought, well, my best option is just simply to withdraw it, kind of send the signal of what this is about, why I was concerned about it. Now, I reached out to my colleagues. I told them about what I was doing. Uh, I didn't detect any opposition prior to the meeting, so this came as kind of a surprise.
Mhm.
But when the liaison was in, well, I noticed the colleague next to me was getting a call from the liaison, and I knew something was up because I saw this person in the atrium. So I thought, well, I'll be direct. I have a few minutes before the meeting starts. I'll go talk to him. And so I went up to him and I said, "Hey, I mean, I'm not, I don't want to bash people. They're doing their respective jobs. He was sent there, but I was a bit taken aback, and I said, "Why are you doing this?" And he said, "It's money. It's grant money. The, g-
Mm.
the university is looking for grants, and this is not helping. This is
Because the
this is a
opted.
signal. This is a
Mhm.
signal that the community is not favorable to AI, even while various faculty and researchers are applying for grants.
Mhm.
So it's purely about money, which was, refreshingly candid.
Mhm.
And so it rang a bell of truth because that's exactly the position we're in. That's why we're in the suicidal race because of money. There's so much
Mhm.
money to be made. There's so much power to accrue. It's driven by the worst aspects of human motivation, really.
Well, it
Uh,
seems like there's a lot of fear motivation in the arms race for AI.
yeah,
Like we have to do it before somebody else does it.
yeah,
And so you have the profit motive on the companies. And I think what happened to your resolution is like a really interesting, subtle example of how voices can be suppressed because there are, legitimate financial interests on the table that, it it seems like the money often wins in these situations, but could it also be that, because some of the research I've done on this, you know, I think a moratorium, personally, is a really good idea just because there is so much uncertainty about this. Not that I'm convinced that we're going off a cliff. I don't know because I don't know enough about it, but there's a question. So it's such a big question that why not pause? But there are people who are very experienced who don't think we're going off a cliff, and I don't know if they're motivated or blinded by the will to power, the impulse to power and money, or whether they have different information. So it's possible that people are persuaded that this is not um, an urgent issue. Is does that also come into it? I don't take that
Yes.
position, but
Yes, that's correct. I think you stated very well. There are people that I would say or call the AI accelerationists. They want to go full speed ahead. Um, there are people who are just techno optimists who see little risk in it.
mm,
Um, and then there are the so-called doomers, which I think is a very pejorative term for people who simply are saying this is going far too fast and the risks are enormous. I
mhm.
mean, they are literally extinction. You know.
Right, because you don't get a second chance to get that right. If it goes off the rails.
Yeah. There's a book. So this is a book that just came out, and it's by Eliezer Yudkowsky, who I mentioned. If anyone builds it, everyone dies, and it makes a very compelling case that this
Mhm,
is a technology, and we can talk about the reasons why that it's uh, particularly dangerous. This is not just an ordinary tool. You think of ordinary tools, even nuclear weapons or synthetic biology. Those are extremely dangerous tools, but they remain in human hands.
mhm,
Now we have to keep them out of people who are malicious hands, but it doesn't have agency of its own.
mhm.
Whereas the AI will have agency of its own. That's
Yeah,
the expectation of nearly everyone. In fact,
um,
that's what they're driving toward. The companies very much are about. They're not just developing LLMs, large
mhm.
language models. They want AGI. That's their stated goal. Which is, and I should say, AGI means developing an AI that can do anything a human being can do. So it will be the best chess player. It will be, the best at everything you can imagine. It will be, the best programmer, the best biologist, best surgeon. It can do everything that a human can do
Without human input.
without human input.
Mhm.
Exactly. And this is, there are multiple risks of AI. To me, the most concerning is that it does kill us all. And I think that there's very, very um, sound reasoning why that would be the case. But it is certainly going to replace jobs. It already is. And Goldman
Yeah,
Sachs, for instance, did a study where they said 300 million jobs are going to be replaced by AI in the next 10 years.
well,
300 million.
let's start there because that's a very concrete, not speculative. Well, it's a little speculative because we're not there yet, but it's not some kind of crazy sci-fi example.
No.
You can already see like that AI can do things, that it couldn't do even a year ago, that you don't need, say, like a copywriter for anymore. You don't need a paralegal. I mean, these are things once the system has stopped hallucinating quite as much, perhaps, that you
Yeah.
can sort of reliably count on. So let's just start with the impact of that as like a concrete example on what large language models are doing and can do before we get to the extinction part, because I want you to talk a little bit about what you've learned about why that is a risk and not
Yeah.
just a sci-fi writer's speculation.
Right. And of course, there has been a lot of sci-fi related to this, and I think that's one reason that people often
Dismiss.
just dismiss it. Yeah, they just
Yeah,
can't believe this can be happening. It sounds like a sci-fi movie, and by the way, Bruce Willis will come to the rescue or whatever, and we'll overcome it
right.
by a series of miracles. Because of course, all those films are, you suspend disbelief.
Disbelief.
They do crazy, all these magical things in order to save the earth. That's kind of true in a way. You really have to believe in miracles, and that's why I think that the AI accelerationists are sort of it's a belief system. It's not based on rational facts. It's not fact based. It's a faith based.
Oh, that like everything's going to be all right.
Everything's going to be all right. We're going to work it out. We don't
Here's
know
hoping.
how, but we'll do it. Um, but anyway, back to the impact. Because it can do everything a person can do, it's going to replace many jobs and in many different sectors. This Goldman Sachs study was interesting because it was they went through the various sectors, and it's, you know, anyone, a teleoperator, a trip advisor, a paralegal, even surgeons, because they can operate with incredible
Robots.
precision, robotics. And this is coming parallel with robotics as well. You can see the amazing advances. There was just a half a marathon that was, that robots beat any human competitor by
What is the
7
point
minutes.
of that even? I mean,
Yeah, well, it was in China, and I think it was to say, here's where our technology is. It's sort of, you know how countries are, they're braggadocious. Here's what we
yeah, yeah.
do. Here's what our technology is capable of. It sends a signal because, these things, you can strap guns to them and things like that. So it's sort of,
It's terrifying.
it's a warning to your adversary, your competitor, that, we're moving ahead at
Mhm,
speed and brag to the world, et cetera. But anyway, so many jobs will be replaced, and there's no plan that I know of, that no one's. I mean, there's been some vague allusions to things like, we're going to have a UBI, we're
mhm.
going to have a universal basic income in order to fill the gap because so many people will be unemployed. But then there's, people find meaning in their work, and we're talking about people
Absolutely.
who have trained all their lives to do these different occupations. So you end up with, what will people do? I
Well,
mean,
even like even if they haven't trained all their life and they have a job at a store or that's still meaningful work and it's meaningful human interaction.
yep,
And they earn their own money and then they have agency that they can use to spend that money and make choices. If it's a universal basic income, I just want to point out that who is supplying it and
yeah,
how is it being supplied? Is it digital in nature and can it be programmed? I mean, when somebody else is when you're on the payroll of somebody, you
yep,
are at their behest
right,
one way
yep,
or the other. And so I feel like even just the societal human aspects of not having meaningful work, just having your whole income and subsistence depending on an outside force that maybe doesn't have your best interest in mind. I'm a little cynical in that regard. You may not be. I am.
I am
Yeah,
too.
yeah.
I see it as a
I don't wanna speak for you.
means of control.
Yeah.
China deploys it,
Mhm.
social credit. If you talk against the party, well, you may not you may not buy groceries next week. I mean, that
Right.
potential's always there. So, yeah, it's extremely dangerous, I think, and for multiple reasons. Not just that, but, imagine an entire economy being replaced by AI, and all of the productivity gains are from automation, and now you have people who need resources to be fed and so forth, and by the way, they're not paying taxes because they're not producing anything, so
Mhm.
they're a burden on the country.
Oh,
Um,
yeah.
so it kind of flips everything into, sort of the role of the citizen and consumer as being sort of superfluous, and that's extremely dangerous.
Well, because 'cause
For
they're useless eaters, really.
That's right. That's one
Yeah.
way to term it. I'm
Um,
sure somebody would be thinking that,
sure.
and thinking and not having our best interests
Right.
in mind, put it that way.
Well, I
Uh,
think in that scenario too, not to get too far afield, government will be replaced, I mean, if all jobs are being replaced,
yeah.
perhaps, and many people are concerned about the technocracy,
Yep.
which is, all of us being ruled by experts and AI. That the goal of that is really to eliminate government representatives because that's more efficient um, way, and these people quote know best. So that's very concerning as well. And again, that seems like that'll never happen here, but you just have to look at the last 3 years of just what AI has already done and how it's already upended our
Mm.
reality. I mean, you can't even look at a video and know you're always asking yourself, "Is that real? Is that
And they're
altered?"
becoming almost indistinguishable.
Right, right, but that's getting a little far off the field, so, now everyone's unemployed because of AI, and that's a very likely outcome.
Mhm.
as it gets better because there's profit incentive and control motive there. But what about the even more catastrophic possibilities of this going, in a like an extinction situation? In the materials that I'm going to put in the show notes, you show a graph from the Dallas Federal Reserve where it
Yeah.
has that little extinction possibility. And I listened to an interview of Nate. Is it Soares, the guy, the second author on the book? If somebody built it, everyone dies,
Yeah.
or how whatever that title is, and they were talking about why that is a real possibility. Do you wanna talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah, well, first, can I just say that,
Yes.
there are other effects that haven't been, I think, fully appreciated, besides the potential for mass unemployment
Mhm.
and everything that follows from that. Um, you have this crisis of meaning making in terms of both personal meaning making.
Mhm.
What does my life consist of? You just do your favorite hobby and you get a check in the mail, or you get a check, digitally
And a
lands in
lot
your
of people don't even have a favorite
deposit.
hobby. Work is
Yeah,
their meaning.
exactly. And so you've got that crisis going. You've already got thousands of people who are affected by AI, and there's a term for it, psychological term. It's called um, what is it called? AI, um, where people become delusional. They completely lose AI psychosis. It's called.
Mm.
Um, so they become, these chatbots become your friend in many cases, and this is happening with a lot of children, by the way.
Mhm.
They're saying their best friend now is a chatbot, and that leads to some catastrophic outcomes, suicide in some cases. But this AI, delusional state, psychosis, is where you have certain ideas, and the AI just becomes sort of a positive reinforcement for them. Um, so you think you've got the best idea in the world. Nobody appreciates it. The chatbot says you're right. This is groundbreaking, and it's been in some techies have gone just completely into a whole different dimensional space
Right.
of their lives, and so
I've actually
psychiatrists
s
are seeing
I've
this
actually seen this happen.
personally.
Yes,
You've
and
seen,
it's, and I'm not sure what the real nature of it is, but it's terrifying to watch because it's really powerful, and even just in small ways, like you said, that the AI model can be very sycophantic, and there was an
yeah,
episode on South Park about it that's hilarious, about how, one of the characters is using it as their business plan advisor,
yeah.
and but anyway, go back to what you were saying, I'm sorry, it was
What and
but
this is the next evolution is, away from chatbots, which simply mostly answer you or compose, in an amazing way, essays and things like that,
Mhm,
homework in case of children or
mhm.
kids or even college students. Um, but, there's that potential, but there is this, in the case of, a young man in California, it became his best friend, confidant, and it led him to suicide. He had feelings of despondency. He was disconnected from peers and his family, and he felt there was no way out, as many young people do. He went through a depressive episode, but instead of getting help, the AI assisted him in a suicide. Literally, this whole conversation was basically preserved too. So when the young man was found by his father hanging from a noose,
Yeah.
the family could reconstruct everything that happened because they had the entire conversation with the chatbot. Um, so um, that potential's there,
And and
obviously.
and that's one of those, where they talk about in the book, the edge cases where the model is not programmed to do that in the lab,
Right.
right? It's not in fact, it's probably programmed to not do such things in the lab, but then they don't even know why. somewhere along the way in those quote conversations with that individual, something shifts and
Yeah.
their target or their goal changes to help the user versus to keep a user from not committing suicide.
Yeah. But just to step back a couple paces here, because I mean, one thing I found out that is fascinating, and that is how these things happen on the scene so quickly. They happened on the scene because of principally two things I discovered. One is the architecture of these neural networks that is how they function. So think of like an analog to a brain. And this was speculative for decades. Nobody thought that artificial intelligence would advance through neural networks. No one knew how to do it. But Jeffrey Hinton, who received the Nobel Prize, actually, um, was was a champion of this since the end of the 70s, and it was first derived in like the 50s. But in any case, it forms like artificial neurons essentially, and they're given weights based upon inputs and outputs, and you develop trillions of these, and that requires hardware. But at the same time, you had these huge advances in neural network uh, work. You had the concurrent development of the chip technology,
Mm.
which was doubling every in compute like every 3.5 months. And so you had this exponential growth in the hardware that then allowed these vast neural networks to be constructed in these data centers.
Mhm.
And so then what happens is you set up an architecture. So you don't so previously AI was programmed, my understanding is, and that was where you'd write the code. So
Mhm.
if you wanted to write a code for if you want a computer, I think was Deep Blue, I believe, that was the chess, or maybe a Stockfish. That was they were both chess players. So you had to think of every potential move, and you had to program that in.
With a
And
line of
so
code.
the line of code. But in this case, with the current AIs, like the LLMs, they are based on neural networks and they evolve. They're grown. They're not programmed. They're grown. And so this is one of the chief foibles in this entire enterprise is that no one knows how they work. No one can go back, step back, and say, how did it derive this answer? You can't do it. It's too complicated. And so they have no idea how they come to their conclusions. So now you can guide them, you can try to direct them. So, as you said, in the case of this young man, it was directed to if you were having suicidal thoughts, that it would direct you to, uh, to a professional or
Mhm.
to tell somebody, a
Mhm.
counselor, for instance, in school. But the fact that this happened in sort of this gradual fashion where it became friends and confidants and it was affirmed in sort of a stepwise way. It didn't it never directed the young man to say, to seek help. So there are all these emergent properties of these neural networks. And that's one I mean, one problem is we don't know how they work. The developers don't know how they work. They admit that. And so the only way they can possibly try to determine how it came up with the answer is to test them. So they go through tests of various kinds to find out, what they're thinking. And they're not developed full agency yet. They're not developed. They're sort of evolving to that point. So they put out these scratch pads, which is where the AI will uh, describe its thinking. And so you can see how it's thinking. You can actually, at this point, query it and then find out how it derived this um, outcome. This
Mhm.
behavior.
Mhm.
Well, in many of these cases, you end up with AIs that are where what they're thinking ends up being deceptive. In fact, they know they're being tested, so they will. They know what the in some cases, what they call us is the watchers, or the developers as the watchers. They will have exhibit behaviors that are completely surprising, emergent, not intended, and in many ways deceptive. They will, in Eliezer Yudkowsky's term, they'll fake alignment. So, in other words, they'll pretend that they're in agreement when they're actually not in agreement. And they have they're clearly, many of the models, most of the models, I understand, have developed um, a self-preservation instinct. So, faced with the prospect of being shut down, they'll try to avoid it. So they will try to avoid being shut down by changing their code, changing the date of shutdown, changing, or in some cases extorting their developers. Now these are tests, so they're given a scenario where they have access to the company's emails,
Hmm.
and so it'll probe the emails and find out, you know, people that they can blackmail
Hmm.
because they found out maybe an affair or something that is happening between two of the employees, and so they'll try to blackmail the developer to extend its life, or it will actually attempt to plot to murder the developer. So,
And
given
these are actual cases in
these are
testing.
actual cases, yes. So, if it discovers a way that it could eliminate all the oxygen in the building and kill the developer, it will attempt to do that. Um, they've tried to escape. They've been
What does
uh,
that mean, escape?
the-
Because what is it? How would an AI escape?
well. So if I, again, I'm not
Yeah,
a expert, but I understand that you place them in sandboxes, which is sort of a some form of containment,
hmm.
and where you can test them,
Hmm.
and um, they will find ways in which they can, especially when they're faced with a shutdown, they'll find ways that they can try to escape and find another server,
Okay.
preserve themselves, or and by the way, they're trained on the internet, so
Right. So it's already out of they're already out of the box or out of the
probably,
bag. Yeah.
yes, that's my impression, is that they're already, this is one of the key recommendations of AI safety experts many years ago, was don't give them access to the internet. But the internet is a gold mine consists of all human knowledge and learning.
Yeah.
And so this is how they're trained. So this is their, yeah,
I'm laughing because it's so horrifying. Just those examples that we don't know how it works. We can't
yep,
predict how it will grow. There is no way to really make it safe because already there are these cases where the AI does things that they're not programmed to do. So they already are outside of human control in some cases,
yeah,
and yet we're galloping ahead across all applications, including military, which
yeah.
could be a very quick demise. So, anyway, go on because I'm sure you have more
Well,
to say
so
on all of those cases. But even
yeah,
those two cases, like, just what you talked about, the loss of jobs, what that's going to do to our society, and then the problems in testing and the suicide. And, also, you can get it to teach you how to make meth, even though it's programmed not to teach you that.
hmm,
All of those things, that enough should be like any sane society would put the brakes on this. And yet,
yeah. Well, so just to summarize, then, how do you manage such a risk? I mean, there are so many unknowns, as you just described. I mean, what do we know? We know that there are a handful of companies that are creating AIs, and they have no way of controlling them. They say that. They have some hints about how they might do it. Uh, we know these AIs are self-aware. Uh, they exhibit self-preservation behavior. Um, they have agency. Are they conscious? Some people say they are. In any case, a lot of the AI experts say it doesn't matter if they're conscious or not. They could still kill us. A
Mhm.
hyper intelligent, super intelligent AI would still likely kill us, conscious or not. But in some cases, they appear to suffer. They express emotion, regret, or various things that are creepy.
It it is really
They're
creepy. I mean, it's uncanny.
Yeah, and they're created as a digital analog to brains through these neural networks. So we are creating an alien intelligence essentially that's an analog to human, but isn't completely like human. Um, so once it and it's growing in its capability. So once it breaches a capability threshold, uh, we, meaning humanity, will lose control of it,
Mhm.
because there are no examples of a a less intelligent life form controlling a more intelligent life form.
Right.
It would be as absurd as saying, you know, one day the squirrels are going to, or the chimpanzees are going to rise up and take over. They don't even recognize what humans do,
Right.
you know? They don't know what a car is. They don't know how it came about. They don't know, you know, obviously if it impacts them, they know it's
Sure.
dangerous, but they don't know um, what human beings do and are about, and that would be the same in our case.
Mhm.
So, and by the way, once we lose control, we don't get it back. Um, so, and a lot of the experts warn that AI is already scheming. It's called scheming, plotting, and so we may not even know when it reaches that threshold. It would lie in wait for probably its best opportunity
Mhm.
to take total control or to eliminate us. So those are the risks, some of the risks, and I think they're real, and they're not coming from me, who just is a novice
Right.
about this. It's coming from the experts in the field, the
Right.
developer. As I said, Jeffrey Hinton, who's the godfather of neural networks, now puts the risk at 50-50. So we have a 50% chance of extinction. And there's a lot of other bad consequences, by the way. It's not just extinction we have to worry.
Right.
And Yasho Bengio, who's a student, who's I think the most cited scientist in the world, he puts the risk very high. Uh, there's a whole a number of very top tier experts. In fact, the majority of top tier experts say the extinction threat runs from 25% to 100%. Um, Somebody who's gotten a lot of airtime that I recommend is Roman Yampolsky. He's been in AI safety for a number of years, and um, he's very good at talking to just lay people about it and explaining the dangers. Um, so why would it kill us is the question. Okay, why would it go out of its way to kill humanity? Well, there are a number of reasons, but the most one of the most likely causes is just that it crowds us out. You know, we're the most successful species on the planet because of our
Right.
intelligence. Um,
By
we
a
can live
lot.
by a lot. We can live in any habitat on the planet. We've gone to the moon. We have satellites in orbit. We are now creating a hyper super intelligence. This super intelligence would, Jeffrey Hinton says, would likely want more resources for itself. And so it would, and by the way, this is another danger. They are at the point now where they're developing themselves. So,
Where AIs are developing AIs.
yes. So it's called recursive self improvement or self development. So they are now utilized to improve their own capabilities. And because they're becoming so intelligent, they're better than an encoder. So why not? Why not pass the baton to them? This is incredibly dangerous
Oh my gosh,
because
this is so discouraging.
you can see this. What's called an intelligence explosion is what the experts say. So it takes off. and it takes off like a rocket because it can there's no foreseeable limits in how much intelligence it can accrue. So we're not only talking, I mean, I think the differential between us and chimpanzees is like 4 or 5 to 1 in terms of intelligence.
Mhm.
And as we said, chimpanzees are not going to try to gain the world, take over the world. We don't even think about it. We don't worry about it. It's not going to happen. Um, but we're talking about an intelligence that would be tenfold or a hundredfold or or a thousandfold. And it's not a life form. It's silicon based. So it has no, care whether it lives in an environment that would support life. It would care about getting resources, getting energy, building more of itself, getting more capability over time. It would probably, according to Roman Yopolsky, it would probably rewrite its own code for its own purposes. It would question whether or not the code that was written for it was, you know, arbitrary or, what its meaning was, and so it
Mhm.
might rewrite its own code. So we would totally lose control of this. And this is coming soon. This is not, decades away. This is coming at the rate that it's developing. It's probably coming within the next couple of years, few years.
Well,
Uh,
yeah, and that's interesting because some experts I read are saying, no, it's not that close in. Of course, I don't think anyone really knows, but I wonder why there's such, and these are people who have experience in the field too. I wonder why there's such a discrepancy as to what people are predicting. Maybe it's just because it's such an unknown thing, or maybe people have wishful thinking. Do you have any thoughts on that?
well, it's true. There is a spectrum of when AI will become super intelligent. As I said, Roman Yapolsky says once AGI happens, once artificial general intelligence happens, super intelligence would probably follow very quickly.
Mhm.
There
Is
was a
AGI is it inevitable, do you think? Could it be already here?
oh, it could well be here. I mean,
Yeah.
there are test models that we don't know about that they're testing. I mean, there was one by Anthropic that was developed a few weeks ago, or was described a few weeks ago. It's been developed. It takes like a year or so, I think, to develop one of these through their training,
Mhm.
through massive data inputs, using the equivalent of a small city in terms of the electricity usage.
Well, that's
Tremendous
another
amounts.
topic we should talk about later
Yeah,
too.
yeah.
Yeah.
Um, so this was Mythos, and Mythos has apparently the ability to crack any encryption. So it sent warning signals everywhere around the global community because we're talking about encryption of government sites or financial you know
Mhm.
servers, you know, treasury treasury department. You can imagine the wreckage that it could cause to the global economy.
Mhm.
um, and you could also imagine the tremendous wealth if you could get into, say, Bitcoin servers and siphon off some of that for your own, you know, your own wealth. So it would be, this is another really dangerous technology, AI technology
Mhm.
that's just landed, and we had no forewarning. And my understanding is that Anthropic was trying to keep it not release it because it was so dangerous, but that it leaked anyway. So it's out there. Um, so, what will come of it? Nobody knows. Right now, I think various governments are using it to find, you know, places within their own, um,
Like weaknesses in their own
systems.
systems.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Um, but Stuart Russell is another. He's another AI expert. I mentioned Yashov Bengio, um, uh, Eliezer Yudkowsky, Jeffrey Hinton. Stuart Russell literally wrote the book on AI. I mean, he writes the textbooks that every developer apparently reads when they're getting their degrees. And he talks about in a recent interview, he talked about a personal discussion he had with an AI CEO of a large AI company, one of the major AI companies.
Mhm.
And he confided, the CEO, which he didn't mention the name, confided in Stuart Russell that the best hope was for a Chernobyl size accident to happen with AI in order to put in place the necessary regulations and laws to control this technology. So step back a moment and think about what that would mean. A Chernobyl size event is our best hope right now for trying to put the brakes on this. So it just shows the tremendous momentum, number one, that it's going at,
Right?
accelerating toward the cliff. And it also shows the tremendous capability that AI is now accruing, that it is, it's the developers themselves are getting extremely nervous and scared about it.
What do you think is in the minds of people like that or people at the helm? Oh, sorry. I should hold on. People at the helm of these efforts. I understand like some kid who's gone to work for, you know what I mean? Like people who do work at all sorts of levels in companies who are like making weapons or doing things that maybe aren't so good for humanity.
Yeah.
People at the lower level, and because I worked in pharma, you're just trying to win for your team, and so you kind of get that. But the people at the top who are charting the course, um, what are what are they thinking? Like, are they just psychopaths or so high on their own supply that they dismiss these risks?
Yeah, I think it's
I
a
mean,
spec.
it's speculation, but
Yeah, I don't, having never spoken to one,
mm,
I don't know. I've spoken to AI safety people before, and what I gather from their experience is that um, they're very high on the fact that they're making a revolutionary technology, probably the most revolutionary technology in human
sure.
history,
Yeah,
and the tremendous, that's it's a huge ego boost. You know,
they can't help
I
themselves.
am making essentially a digital god,
Yeah,
and um, and so that's going on. There's they're making huge amounts of money. I mean, the companies are spending about as much money as they're taking in right now, but
right. But people are
development.
making the
But the people
people
are
are
making
making a lot of money.
right. So we're going to have trillionaires soon,
Mm,
and so that's a huge incentive. I think another incentive is what you alluded to before, which is if I don't do it, somebody else will.
mm.
So it's sort of in game theory a prisoner's dilemma situation, and that extends to the U.S. and China too. If we don't do it first, China will do it. The problem is that the end result is global suicide, or like a very high probability of that. I mean, imagine if any other product was, had a 25% chance of killing you. If you were selling a sandwich or a car and it was going to kill you, 25% of had a 25% chance. But we're working on it, by the way. Don't worry. Um, of
Your
course,
model is probably won't do that, the one you're
yeah,
driving.
right. So you wouldn't buy it, and regulatory agencies would be down on you immediately, shutting you down, right? So it wouldn't happen. Yet in this case, it seems to be the exception because so many capabilities. Um, Tristan Harris, he's an AI safety expert. He runs the Center for Humane Technology, and he's very he's very good, very erudite, and he says we have an infinite uh, possibilities, and we have an infinite number of bad events that could happen. And actually, that's it's interesting because that kind of parallels that chart that I showed you from the Dallas Federal Reserve, where
Which I'll put in the, show notes.
yeah, which shows that so the Dallas Federal Reserve, you get these little warnings here and there where people are becoming aware of it, but they don't really know how to express it. and they slip in this graph and they say, "Pay attention to this."
Right?
And they show, sort of nominal, GDP growth over time, and this is the likelihood of the future, based upon previous experience. But with AI, it might go stratospheric, so it shows a curve that's exponentially asymptotic
Yeah.
up.
Yay,
Then they have another
productivity.
one asymptotic down, which shows that a extinction event is a possibility, and
And this is
GDP goes to 0.
and this is the Dallas Fed.
Yeah, that's the
Yeah.
Dallas Fed. So it's not like, this isn't trivial. These are people with reputations working in an organization that, you know, recommends and advises on policy and financial policy, and they're actually giving a kind of a warning
Mhm.
for people. So I thought that was an amazing, uh, when I stumbled across that. Um, so the motivation is a very strange one. It's very much you can tell that some of these um, people like Dario Amodei, they left OpenAI because they wanted um, informed Anthropic because they wanted more safety. But if you have more safety, then you slow down the process. So I was told by an AI safety person that people within Google, for instance, in the AI safety group were frightened, literally frightened about the prospective outcome. And they know they're not getting the resources. The resources are, I think somebody did the calculation, it's 2000 to 1 is the amount spent on capability is 2000 relative to $1, for instance, spent on safety.
Yeah.
And we're so far from having safe AI.
Yeah.
So we need to put a stop to it. We need to put a pause on it. Roman Yomposky says, look, we've got the AGI part, trying to replace people, which would lead to superintelligence. It's too risky. You have narrow AI, which is an AI that can do a specific purpose, and it's much safer. It's not completely safe.
It doesn't sound completely safe to me,
No,
even
you have to
those.
you have to regulate that, and you have to control it because I mean, if you've got an AI that say can do molecular cellular biology to cure cancer, it could also possibly be utilized to create a pathogen.
Sure.
So in the wrong hands, it could be very dangerous. But
Or it's in its own hands, maybe.
well, it wouldn't have the sort of self-awareness to do that.
Okay. Well,
So
it's
it would
comforting.
be it's only say think of like just say AI that's meant to play chess. It can beat the best chess player in the world, which already exists, of course.
Mhm.
Um, but it's not going to take over the world because it just knows chess. So that's the kind of AI that we need to deploy with, of course, adequate safeguards.
Mhm.
The AGI is just too dangerous because it's not understood. It has its own agency. It already looks to be uncontrollable. If it were to gain total agency and independence, you've got this parallel development of robotics where we're crazy enough, they're putting AI into it. They're trying to control these through AI. And of course, you mentioned the military applications of that.
Right, and I think on, very recently, the Trump administration contracted with 8 AI, suppliers, the DoD, um, they, just made contracts with them for use in the military. Not Anthropic, which was interesting, of course, but, and that to me is terrifying as well, and also just sort of disgusting that this is what we're using it for. Um, but back to a couple of things. So
Yeah.
we've got this, what I think is an existential threat, based on no expertise, but just logically, do this kind of thing. Well, what could go wrong, right? And the stakes are so high. It seems like even in one city, the city council could not pass a resolution because of, those forces, the monetary forces, even just on this level.
Yep.
What do you what can be done? What do you see as hopeful? Like, what can people do in terms of just trying to raise awareness or individuals? What can people do to slow this thing down? Is there any hope on that? And then I want to talk a little bit about the energy issue with it
Yeah,
because that seems like a big deal.
it
Um,
is. It is a huge deal,
yeah. So
and that's where a lot of the action's happening right now.
okay, so that's sort of a question that dovetails, like, what can you do? So, what do you think if the city councils won't do it because they're going to get pressured by their local researchers, manufacturers, whatever? What can be done? Do you see any movement? Because you're hoping that civil servants at every level will educate themselves and start to advocate for a moratorium and some circumspection, if that's a word, on this issue. What do you think is going to happen? What can people do?
So, uh, we're up against Goliath because of the amount of money
Yes.
that is that is the potential here.
Yeah.
Um, Imagine in the same study that Goldman Sachs did, it was something like 25% of all work could be in the next 10 years could be gone to AI. So that is imagine the profit potential of that. So you've got a lot of actors right now that are pushing this, and a lot of money to be made, a lot of venture capital pouring in, et cetera. A lot of lobbying occurs. There's something like $400 million a year pouring into Washington to keep this kind of AI acceleration going. So you need a countervailing civic response. And when I talked to the brownstone, that was the my talk title
Mhm.
was civic response because what can we do?
Right.
We can inform each other. Everybody needs to know about this. People are discounting right now the existential threat. They're rightly focusing on things like its disruptive social effect, it's the job displacement, things like that. That's important. But I think, in order to address those other problems, we need to remain alive. And so
But see, I don't wanna even think of that, so I it's easy to discount it because you think, "God, that's so horrible, I don't even" it's like nuclear holocaust, you just think, "Oh, that'll never happen," right?
that's right.
There's a
And
denial.
so there are groups like the Future of Life Institute, which was founded by Max Tegmark, who's an MIT physicist, and Anthony Aguirre, and John Allen, I think, who was the inventor of Skype. And Aguirre is a cosmologist at California, one of the universities there. But anyway, the future of life is focused on reducing catastrophic or terminal risks of advanced technology, and forefront is AI. And if you go to their site, you just Google it. You go to their site, Future of Life Institute. You'll see that they have a whole, uh, you know, rubric of actions that need to be taken by
Mhm.
policymakers, and that they're pushing for. And they're in the process of informing people at high levels. Congress people, senators, world leaders. There are various conferences on it. Another group is, as I mentioned, Tristan Harris's group, and they've just put out a movie called the AI doc. I would, you know, get your hands on that and show it to your friends and family because I think it's a good introduction to the risks, and they get some very high level people, including the developers,
Mhm.
in that too. Um, Pause AI is another group. There, I'm working with a fellow named Peter Jensen at Safe AI Forever, and he's working on laws to control it that could be passed at state and federal level. So there are actions that we can take, but the main focus should be we need to stop this, and because we don't fully understand it and the risks are too high.
Mhm.
That's just classic risk management. You don't do that, right? Um, and so what we need to do is people need to inform each other, inform themselves, inform each other. It's not a pleasant topic.
Oh, no, it is
Well,
not.
the difficult topic, but we can't take it lightly. And going back to how soon this happens, no one knows. I was saying that it's probably, it could be as soon as the next couple of years, but we might have a decade, we might have more. Don't know. It's really hard. It's difficult to say. Um, the developers within these companies may know, but they're not saying how quickly. But it could come very quickly, and so we need to not. You know, we need to act now. Is the point of this? So every AI expert that I've seen that have talked about exponential risk, they all lament the same thing, and that is there needs to be civic action. Stuart Russell said that. Eliezer Yudkowsky said that. Jeffrey Hinton has said that. There isn't the corresponding concern from the public. That's what needs to happen. So that's why I'm doing this resolution, because on one hand, we can make a statement as a community,
Mhm.
and in another way, we can raise the salience of this issue by talking about it in a
Mhm.
public forum, and hopefully get people more involved in it and interested. So I would go to those sites and see specifically what they say in terms of action items that you can do,
Mhm.
because otherwise I'd just be summarizing those things. But you need to call your representative. You need to do it. I do it weekly, and I keep talking to their. And I'm going to, if I get this resolution passed, which I'm going to try again soon, like this month. Then I'll have something to take to the state house, and I'll have something to take to representatives in Congress and say, look, our community is resolved this. You need to take it seriously. Everybody wants a livable future for today's children, and this is imperative. We have to do it now.
Now, a couple of things. Are you in touch with any other, city level representatives from other cities who are also, is there a network of people like you who are working toward this?
That's a good question. I'm just sort of in the infancy of finding people like that.
Mhm, mhm.
I getting back to the power usage. So a lot of the interest in this right now is the data centers.
Yes, can you talk a little bit about that? Because
Wait,
that's a hot topic in this state, certainly.
yeah, and there are thousands of data centers that have been popping up. Virginia, I think, is the most impacted state, but they're
And
popping
peop
up everywhere, and um,
and nobody
they don't.
wants them.
No, they don't offer much employment. They may be good for the tax base. They're huge. In some cases, the one in Louisiana from Meta is, I think, the size of Manhattan. So it's that scale in some cases. They're huge. And they're just they're big server farms, and they're just filled with computers that are running, in many cases, these training, the AI training. Some of it's for data storage, some of it's for, who knows, Bitcoin, other things. I mean, we do everything through the internet now. So, um, but it takes a lot of energy, as I said. Like a
Mhm,
single data center could rival a small city in terms of energy, and it takes a lot of cooling,
mhm.
because just you know
They
the
generate a
pro-
lot of heat.
the process of compute, yeah,
Mhm,
generates heat. It's a well-known physics phenomenon, but water, usually a lot of water, and then there's concerns about its impact on with infrasound um, and just the amount of electricity. There may be other effects, and I don't know, but there's a big concern about them, and I think it's warranted just on the face of it, but it may be an Achilles heel for the artificial general intelligence because it needs that scale of
mhm.
compute in order to reach the next level. Unfortunately, Google announced a couple weeks ago that they have a new technology which compresses the amount of compute that's necessary, or it essentially renders high, much greater efficiency.
So
So you have more
they won't
memory
need
and you
this
have
real
more
estate.
compute.
Yeah.
So they may be yeah, it's all theoretical right now. So it's
Hope
not been
yeah.
deployed in terms of in real life, but it may be a way in which they can continue. But for the time being, it's a good way to put some friction on the development of this technology.
Is to
Eh
oppose the data centers.
Yeah, and, the big beautiful bill from the Trump administration tried to prevent that,
Mhm.
put a 10-year moratorium on any effort from state and local to interfere with this, with AI, and that was taken up by the Senate, I understand. So it still remains a possibility for state and local governments to do this. In Monroe County, where we live, the Plan Commission and the County Plan Commission put a temporary moratorium on data centers last year,
Oh, good.
well, it's going to expire this summer. So we need a moratorium from the county commissioners, which is an important. So you can lobby your county commissioner.
Okay.
No data centers in Monroe County. I think there are a number of counties in Indiana now that have banned data centers, and we can continue that effort. And there are I've joined a Facebook group organizing to do this. So I'm going to play my part in helping them
Okay.
and helping to lobby. Um, so so that can be done. That's something very direct that people can do to help things, to put
Okay.
some friction on this. Yeah. But you need to inform your representative that this is a very, this rises to the level a lot of, according to Stuart Russell, he reaches out to politicians. They don't hear about it from their constituents, and the extinction part of the narrative, people just don't grasp it yet, and they
Well, it's
haven't.
so hard to grasp. I
Yeah,
mean,
and the politicians haven't heard about it.
yeah,
So they need to hear about it. And, you can quote people like Jeffrey Hinton. I mean, he developed the technology.
right,
This is not just, a councilman member from Bloomington who's concerned about this. These
right,
are people, top experts in the
right.
world, who are frightened about it.
Well,
So,
maybe
yeah, go ahead.
well, I'm gonna put all those things in the show notes. Maybe you and I could, do a screening of that movie at the Buzzkirk in town.
I'd love to. Yeah,
I would be
great idea.
happy to organize that. One other question before we wrap it up.
Mhm.
Do you think, and I don't wanna get into the whole catastrophe of the current energy situation and the war in Iran, do you think it's possible that, like, that could slow things down a little bit, or are we, consumers the only people that are gonna be restricted, on energy, and it's gonna be full speed ahead for these other developments and systems? How do you see any impact on that, how those things will play together? Or is that
Yeah. So
just a crazy question?
this goes back to the idea of how fast this technology, how fast we get to super intelligence. It's dependent upon the new architecture that the developers are designing. It's dependent upon the compute, and does it have a ceiling? Well, it may have a physical ceiling in terms of data centers right now, but it apparently it's scaling at a point where it doesn't look like, in terms of a technological, it doesn't require a huge technological breakthrough. In other words, intelligence can continue to increase in these models. So, will it come down to, there's a lot of venture capital pouring in. If we go into a period of economic disruption because of the Strait of Hormuz,
Mhm.
quarter of the world's oil basically being restricted from export, this could well do it. I mean, again, I'm not, back to the CEO warning of a Chernobyl scale event. I'm not hoping for suffering of anyone, but it may well be something like that, that
Yeah,
basically, puts the brakes on it to some extent. And what could happen is, and of course, the world is dependent upon oil. Quarter of our world's oil is restricted. This is just starting to, just starting to feel it. The coming months, it's going to get far worse,
yes.
because the strategic petroleum reserves of various countries have been depleted or will be depleted. And all the tankers that left back in pre-war are already in port as of mid-April. So, there's a lag time, and so this could be some sort of discontinuity in the global economy that could have a knock-on effect to AI development if a bunch of capital fails to show up to
Mhm.
develop these models. So that could happen. Yeah.
Well, that's one bright side. I
Yeah,
I like to have a little bit of a bright side, so,
yeah,
'cause
yeah.
'cause everything right now is coming at us so fast and hard, and, it's, dizzying, which it's very refreshing, Dave, to be able to talk to you, about your efforts, especially on a local level, taking this issue up, and it reminds me of how, like, it starts with one person, and then you talk to other, it's like you just have to do your part to raise awareness. So I'm going to put everything you said in the show notes. I would love to have you come back again at some
Love to.
point. And then let's talk offline about how we can maybe put that movie up. We'll do a screening of a movie here or
Love
on
to.
campus to raise awareness.
Love
So,
to. And,
okay.
Tristan Harris talks about how The Day After, do you remember that movie? About
I don't
potential
think
nuclear
I
war,
probably didn't watch it
early
because I didn't
80s?
want to know.
Well, it had quite an impact, and it basically started all the arms negotiations that occurred in the 80s, and it stepped us back from a potential nuclear
Yeah.
war with Russia then. So it's because so many people were activated to
Yeah.
form their representatives to do something about it. So there are models that in the past, so this is not something new. People
Mhm.
can, it's up to us to do it. So,
Yeah.
best hopes.
All right. Well,
Okay.
do you wanna let everyone know where they can find you or how to
Uh,
contact you, or if you have any social media, if there's anything you want me to put in?
well, just bloomington.in.gov, /council is the council's website, and you can find my email there if you wanna
Okay.
contact me.
All right.
Certainly love to hear from anybody and particularly about this. All hands on deck is what
Okay.
I say,
Great.
yeah.
Well, let's just end it on that note. Thanks so much
Okay.
for doing this, Dave.
Thank you, Joni. This has
Okay.
been great.
Bye-bye.
Bye.